farm legislation. VOA's Ken Farabao has more to say.
Henry County, Illinois farmer Steve Nightingale and hundreds more from the statewide agricultural community gathered at the Illinois Farm Bureau's annual meeting this month in Chicago to discuss the path forward amid uncertainty about U.S. trade policy.
The farm economy is not great right now. The potential for tariffs, the combination of those two make any decision gets you a little nervous.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture's forecasts for 2024 show farmers across the United States losing nearly a quarter of their net farm income compared to the 2022 peak, while prices for inputs like fertilizer are near all-time highs. Nightingale is concerned about further economic turmoil if social media posts by President-elect Donald Trump outlining tariffs on some U.S. trading partners become policy.
When other countries retaliate against us, they go after the bread and butter, which is agriculture.
Nightingale, the president of the Henry County Farm Bureau, hopes Trump's pick to head the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, understands his concerns about tariffs and the importance of passing a new farm bill to replace one that expired earlier this year.
We were kind of surprised because her name was never on any of the lists that we were seeing.
David Iserman farms outside Streator, Illinois, in LaSalle County, one of the top corn and soybean producing counties in the country.
She doesn't really have that background that some of the other ag secretaries have had, but that doesn't mean she'll be a bad one, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Rollins, who served in the previous Trump administration as the acting director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, graduated from Texas A&M University with a degree in agricultural management.
So she's got some ag background, and hopefully she's going to come in with an open mind and be supportive of farmers, and she said she is.
Iserman is also trying to have an open mind about transforming U.S. trade policy.
And until he takes office, until the new president takes office, we're really not going to know what's going to happen. But I know we've heard he's had talks with Canada, and supposedly those were productive. So maybe it's working in the case of Canada.
I just don't want an agricultural model that's built on government policy.
Dan Miller is the CEO of Steward, which crowdsources investors, connecting them with farmers and other producers. Miller says tariffs may encourage greater diversity in what U.S. farmers grow and where they sell it, shifting from reliance on exporting corn and soybeans to increased production of other crops.
You have a model that's built on huge amount of policy and government support. Most farmers I work with would prefer not to have that. They're just stuck in it. They grow corn and soy because they can drop it at the elevator, get paid.
Miller acknowledges shifting production of any crop is a lengthy, expensive, and complicated process, requiring new infrastructure, but hopes debate about tariffs and U.S. agricultural policy allows for policy to shift.
We just want a free market.
While Nightingale wants new buyers for corn and soybean crops, Iserman would settle for more certainty in U.S. trade and agricultural policy.
We're using us as a pawn, agriculture as a pawn, and that concerns me.
Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Chicago.
Today we are looking at Cyclone Chido, with the government of Zimbabwe saying it is ready to respond to Cyclone Chido, which is expected to hit the country amid reports that it has now weakened in strength. The cyclone has already caused fatalities in Mozambique and Malawi. Several hundred people, maybe even thousands, may have been killed by the cyclone Chido in the French archipelago of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. A senior local French official said on Sunday. Zachary Coleman produced this report.
Video released on Sunday by the French gendarmerie showed the wreckage of hundreds of makeshift houses after the most powerful cyclone in nearly a century struck the archipelago of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. A top local official told a local outlet that several hundred, maybe even thousands, may have been killed by Cyclone Chido. Asked about the death toll of several hundred, the French Interior Ministry said, quote, "It will be difficult to account for all victims," and said a figure could not be determined at this stage. Cyclone Chido swept through Mayotte overnight, according to the French Meteorological Administration. The forecaster said the storm brought winds of more than 124 miles per hour and damaged makeshift housing, government buildings, and a hospital, adding it was the strongest storm in more than 90 years to hit the islands. Mayotte's islands have been a focal point for illegal immigration from nearby Comoros. In recent decades, thousands have attempted to cross from Comoros on the east coast of Africa to Mayotte, which has a higher standard of living and access to the French welfare system. According to the French Interior Ministry, over 100,000 undocumented migrants live in Mayotte. Some 77% of the people in Mayotte live below the French poverty line. The cyclone went on to hit northern Mozambique on Sunday.
And in Zimbabwe, the Civil Protection Unit Director Nathan Nkomo says it is working on minimizing the loss of life and damage that will be caused by Cyclone Chido and is continuing to be on high alert. Let's hear what he had to say.
We cannot stop a cyclone, but we want to minimize the damage, we want to minimize the loss of lives of our people. That's why we are very lucky that a few days ago, Cabinet endorsed our blueprint, which is the multi-hazard contingency plan. Now I want to translate what is in that blueprint into deliverables. It's not a question of Cabinet endorsing the blueprint, it's a question of us disseminating the contents of that blueprint and start implementing in our respective areas. I know of the 8 provinces, if I am correct, Mr. Ngoma, they are likely to be visited by Cyclone Chido. If we are to go as per, it's a prediction. If we are to go by the prediction, and we must make sure that all those provinces are activated. Luckily, as I said, we are not the only country. This is a very good example of a transboundary hazard that we must deal with, because about half the number of the SADC countries are also likely to be visited by
That there was the Civil Protection Unit Director Nathan Nkomo speaking to Studio 7. Please stay tuned as we take a short break. We'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
And for those that have just joined us, please note that we are streaming live on all our Facebook pages, VOA Shona, VOA Studio 7, and VOA Ndebele. We're also live on YouTube at VOA Zimbabwe, so please join us. And to discuss the cyclone Chido, we are joined by Mr. James Ngoma, the head of Public Weather Services of the Meteorological Services Department in Zimbabwe. And we also have on Skype Mr. Masimba Mavaza, who is a ZANU-PF member, also joining us. But I'll start off with you, Mr. Ngoma. Makadi yenyu? Mr. Ngoma, minoti murukuti nzwere. While we're trying to sort out the line, I'll come to you, Mr. Mavaza. Good evening, Mr. Mavaza. Your audio is not clear. I'm not sure, we're having a bit of technical problems. In the meantime, we're going to try Mr. Mavaza again. Hello, Mr. Mavaza. I think we're having a bit of a technical problem because I can hear Mr. Ngoma's phone, but he's not on the line. So,
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Welcome to the program, Mr. Mavaza.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, and welcome, Zimbabwe.
Yes, we're hearing the government saying that it is ready for Cyclone Chido, but there was a lot of criticism on how the government handled funds or donations that came in for Cyclone Idai, the aftermath. So what's going to be different this time? Should they be a disaster?
assuming that disaster is coming, the government this time is fully prepared. We have learned lessons from Cyclone Idai. We have now, the government now has put things in place in making sure that whatever comes for those affected, it will go to them. The police, the civil services, and any other stakeholders are actually working up together to make sure that whatever happens, our people are protected and Zimbabweans will get the protection fully from their country and from the well-wishers. So yes, there's going to be a great change. The change will be simply that we have learned our Idai was one of the first West natural disasters in Zimbabwe. And a lot of things to be learned, and the preparedness has been up to an extent that we are now, the government is highly prepared, and some non-governmental organizations are in place as well, and every person who can help is actually registering with the government to assist should there be a need for such assistance. So there will be a lot of difference this time, but we are praying that what has been said, forecast by the meteorologist, will come through, that the wind...
I think we're losing you there, Mr. Mavaza. Your audio was very good, but you suddenly just cut off. Hello?
Yes.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Makadinde vangoma ere?
Yes.
Mungatitsananguriro kuti zvamira sei takatarisa nyaya iyi yecyclone Chido munyika pari zvino?
Kana chitarisa cyclone Chido, it made landfall over the northern part of Mozambique nezuro. That was Sunday, 15 December. Then with our cyclones, usually when they make landfall, kana abudam nyanza are on land, they tend to lose their energy. But are not reduced in terms of one, the intensity. Kana chireva intensity tinenge chireva maspiniro kana kuti kutendedzeko inenge ichiita mhepo yotinoti the spin rate kana kuti speed yewind as it rotates. Saka champupuriti kana kuti utumpengweri kana rangomhara pane land because of the friction between land and itself, inotanga kureduce in terms of speed, and we see it reducing in the wind speed as well as the rainfall, because as it loses wind speed, it also loses the energy to hold the water up, so it dumps most of its rain in its path as it moves. But we noted that as it made landfall near Pemba in the northern parts of Mozambique, it began to lose a lot of water, and it was heading westwards towards the southern parts of Malawi, where it continued to lose a lot of water in the form of rainfall. And as of this morning, it was now over. Again, the northern parts of Mozambique, Yapura, Malawi are on the other side in Tete province, in between Malawi and our Nyamapanda border. What it was, the clouds were stretching as far as Manicaland, Mutoko, in Mashonaland, East, Makore. I think the heavier falls were still over the northern part of Mozambique, and we had more light showers in the interior of the country.
Saka pari zvino tingati vanhu vanofanira kuramba vari prepared here kana kuti zvakamira sei ipapo?
Saka pari zvino it's no longer a tropical cyclone, but it's now remnant moisture that kungoongorora kuti it's being added to the moisture that is already present. Tanditori nemakore angachibva kuBotswana angachipinda mumatableland north nematableland south achipfuura nemunyika muno muZimbabwe. Azosangana nemhepo dzanga dzichibva tropical depression yedu yanga imbori Chido ezvino yakunzi tropical depression. Saka pasangana mhepo idzi upazoitika ma-heavy downpours kunzvimbo dzakaita sana Midlands, zvisanganisira parts dzeMashonaland West zvichipinda nemumasving asi hadzingazosvika kudzasi uku nekunzvimbo dzakatarirwa kunana Manicaland uku, because kwapinda more of the moisture than the heavy rain that we were expecting.
Thank you so much. Please stay on the line. Coming back to you, Mr. Mavaza, you wrote a very interesting piece about why cyclones are getting named. What's your view? We saw Idai and now we're seeing Chido. How is Zimbabwe featuring in all these cyclones?
Normally what happens when cyclones are being named, the region, the meteorologists in the region, they come up with names from each country, which will be
your line is cutting off. We're going to try and sort out the audio. Please stay on the line. I'll come to you, Mr. Ngoma. Ndokuvunza the same questions. How are these cyclones named?
So for cyclones, long back, we used to know that it was a first notice, first name. Mm-hmm. So usually the fishermen or the sailors would name these when they saw them. And usually most of them were named according to women, but that changed as of the 1980s when people started naming them based on the regions that were fitting. So for us in the Southwest Indian Ocean, which covers the SADC region, most of our cyclones come from the Indian Ocean. So we sit every 2 years as meteorologists and scientists, and we try and come up with names that do not are almost unisex, so you can choose either male names or female names. You can also choose the names that do not mean anything obscene in the different languages within the SADC region. So it has to be a name that people can agree that this one almost is a good name for all countries. It has to be short, easy to pronounce, and also easy to relate to within the African context.
Thank you so much. I understand our other guest Tendai Mbofana is also on the line now. Mr. Mbofana, how are you?
I'm fine, Marvelous. How are you?
I'm very fine. If you can tell us, what are you seeing on the ground? We hear government saying they are ready for any such disasters as Cyclone Chido, which we now understand is now weaker and will not be as harsh as it was expected. But from what you're seeing on the ground, is government ready for natural disasters?
That's a very good question, Marvelous. I am not very sure if we can place much confidence in what the government continues to reassure the people of Zimbabwe. Remember, Zimbabwe has already been hit by several cyclones in the past, whether they will still be called cyclones or tropical depression, storms, or whatever name they'll be given. Remember Elin, remember Idai, the most devastating one, which hit us not so long ago. But in all these instances, remember a cyclone has already been mentioned by your experts, does not just happen from Norway. It just doesn't appear from Norway. You know that there is a cyclone that is coming, like now. You can even track it where it's coming. I've been tracking it for the past 2 days or so, and so forth. We know which direction it's likely to take, and we know which regions it's likely to hit. But somehow, for some strange reason, the government of Zimbabwe and other authorities like those responsible for disaster management and so forth, they never seem ready. Quite frankly, there was no reason for people in 2019 to be killed by Cyclone Idai. We had known about it. The government kept reassuring us that we prepared. Everything possible was being done to avert any deaths and any serious disasters. But look at what happened. Today, even, a lot of families still don't know where their loved ones are. The government seems to be dragging its feet even to declare those people who've been missing for years to be deceived so that the loved ones that have been left behind can be given their death certificates, and they can try by all means to move on, as hard as that might be. So actually, last month in November, I was talking to some of those that were affected by Cyclone Idai when we were having our own climate change outreach programs in Wange, but they came, we invited them from Chimanimani, they came and so forth, and it was very troubling, it was very heart-wrenching when we were listening to their testimonies of how today they are still without shelter. Today, years later, the government keeps telling us that they're building shelters, they've built shelters, they've done this, they've repaired bridges and roads and so forth, but quite honestly on the ground, there are people today we are affected by Cyclone Idai who are still living in the open. Some were given tents, the tents have since been torn out of Baruka, they are inhabitable. So you find that if the government is going to tell us today that they are ready for this cyclone, I don't know what they'll be talking about if they still haven't fixed the issues of Cyclone Idai. How can they say that they are ready for this cyclone? I'm just praying that when it comes, its intensity will not be as catastrophic as we saw in the past. Otherwise, we'll just see a repeat of Cyclone Idai. We'll see people running around as if they didn't know that this thing was going to happen. So I do not believe that there is adequate preparation for this cyclone at all.
Tomboti mavunzwa negovernment kuti saka poitwa sei tichiona zvakadzidzwa kubva kune Cyclone Idai nemagariro amuri kuita matimi mune maoutreach amunoita maiti chi?
Takudiwa iye zvino ndechekuti hurumende yakuda kuti ichiisa mari neproper planning. Nzvimbo dzakawanda dzinorohwa nemacyclone taakudziziva. Hongu pano nepapo dzingashanduka hadzo kuti yazorohwa kwakati senge ine direction yairi kubva nayo, hatisi kunyatsoona kuti iri kuda kuzopinda nekupi kana yakasvika kuZimbabwe. Asi nzvimbo dzinowanzorohwa nemacyclone taakuziva kuti Chimanimani, kupi ikoko. Hurumende inofanirwa kuve pari zvino yaisa nzira dzekuti vamwe ngavatobviswavo ikoko votsvakirwa nzvimbo dzitsva dzekugara, ngakuiswawo zvivakwa zvakasimba. Munozwa macyclone ndosaka tizongozi munongoona vanhu vanorohwa nawo kumaruzevha, moti nzvimbo idzodzo hadzina madhorobha here ariko kosei vasinganyanyobatwi spirit vari kumadhorobha. Zviri kutoreva kuti chero dzimba dzacho nemabridge acho ari kuvakwa kumaruzevha ikoko haana kusimba, kungovakwawo zvekungoti pakaitwa chikoro, pakavakwa dzimba, pakavakwa bridge, pakavakwa mugwagwa, asi zviri zvinhu zvatingati muchirungu substandard. Hazvina kuva standard akafanana nezviri kuvakwa madhorobha. Saka iye zvino kuri kuti cyclone yarova kwaMutare kana kuti Manimani, muchaona kuti vari kumadhorobha vangakomborenowo pano nepapo kuti mvura dzazopinda mumba kana kuti zvazodini, asi kashoma kuzonzwa kuti imba yaputsika. Nekuti chinonyanyouraya vanhu pamacyclone kwete haisi mvura chete, chinonyanyouraya pacyclone kuwirwa nezvinhu zvinenge zvakuondomoka zvakuporomoka, angave dzimba kana takanzwa chikoro chiya chesechausere kana sikakanga sikoko kuChimanimani, vana vakafa ndekuti chikoro chakawira pamusoro pavo. Kuna kutoti chikoro icho chiya chisina kutobosimba. Saka ndo zvakudiwa kuti hurumende ngaitisa mari nekuronga kwakanaka kuti infrastructure inovakwa kunzvimbo dzinotozikanwa kuti idzi dzinorohwa nemacyclone ngakuve nezvivakwa zvakasimba. Kune nyika dzakaita sana Japan kunotozikanwa kuti ndiko maearthquake anoitika kana ka50 hameno pagore, vanotoziva kuti vakutovaka dzimba dzekuti dzakazvinunguka dzinongoramba dzakamira. Saka tinotadza kuzviita sei imba munyika yakapfuma kwaMutare ikoko Chimanimani ndokune ngoda dzese. Mari tinadzo muZimbabwe, ngadzichinekwawo kuti dziri kushanda kubatsira vari kutambura, dzichionawo kuti nzvimbo idzodzo ngadziiswe mari yese yekuona kuti zvivakwa zvese zviri kuitwa ikoko ngazvive zvinhu zvinotenda zvinhu zvakaita semacyclone. Vanoonekawo vachigara panzvimbo dzisingaiti wobviswa woiswa kumwe kwakavakwa kune zvinhu zviripo zvakatogadziriswa zvakanaka, kwete matende, voenda vonogara ikoko. Kuvatsanangurwawo zvinonzwisisika kuti sei nzvimbo iyo isikachaiti kugara.
Aiwa, tinotenda Vambofana. Regai tiuye kwamuri Vamavaza, muri kunzwa zviri kutaurwa naVambofana, munoti?
I'm sure you can hear me now.
Yes.
Right, chokusaka Vambofana handinzwisise kuti sei vasina kunzwisisa cyclone idai haina kuunzwa nekuda kwehurumende, uyezve kugadzirira kana kuti preparedness yehurumende panguva iyoyo yanga isingatarisirike, because takasina kubvira tapinda mudambudziko kana tsekwende yakaita seidai. Kwaya kutanga kuti nyika inorohwa nedambudziko rakaita serori. Pacyclone idai matombo aibviswa mumakomo achinopasa dzimba kana dzaane makore dzakamira. Haisi nyaya yekuwaka kwedzimba kusina kusimba. Uyezve kuti macyclone anongorova kumaruwa chete, vari kutadza. Nyika dzakawanda dzine maguta akawanda dzinorohwa mumaguta, vanogara vasina magetsi, dzimba dzinoeredzwa. Cyclone haisarudze kuti uri papi, asi kana chinhu zvinoenderana neusimbi kana kusimba kwayakaita nguva yapinda mumba. Saka isusu iko zvinezvi tiri kutarisira kuti mvura takakunaya maHarare izvozvi, but haisi kunaya ine simba ratakatarisira. Saka tikudwa kufara kuti zvinenge zviri nani, nekuti vari kuongorora vari kuti yadzora kana kumhanya kwayo tikati speed yayo yapa kilometers per hour, zvatova zvavanani. Asi anoda kungopindura Vangoma kuti yes, Vangoma vacharawo zvakanaka, asi tropical cyclones, as we know, they are quite very dangerous natural hazards. And the naming of these cyclones is not only done as he had said. All Kudara, the names were given after the disaster. If the cyclone beats a ship, it will be called the cyclone of Ship Aya. If the cyclone beats Los Angeles, it will be called the cyclone of Los Angeles. But now then they changed and giving them names which were feminine. But there was a problem where the names given to the cyclone was the same name used in the American military. And therefore the regions were encouraged to give cyclones which come to their regions the name. So the process of determining names for tropical cyclones is conducted by a relevant tropical cyclone regional body at annual or by annual session. So in other words, the region sits down with all these meteorologists to sit together and they give them each country. That's why I and Chido, they were Zimbabwean names.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mavaza. Regai tipe Vangoma the last word kuti Paris zvino vanhu votarisira chii takatarisa cyclone Chido iyi.
I just wanted to touch on what was being discussed. Kana titarisa cyclone. In the southern hemisphere, we call them cyclones, but kana tiri kunzvimbo dzakaita sana America, they are called hurricanes.
Okay.
Kana tiri kunana India, they are the same typhoons. But mukanzwa kuti hurricane yarova kuAmerica, you know that there's going to be disaster, there's going to be destruction. So it's not a Zimbabwean challenge alone, but it's a global challenge. These forces of nature do not choose whether it's a developed country or a developing country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngoma. Unfortunately, we've got a cyclone here. So thank you to our guest. We had James Ngoma, the head of public weather services in Harare, and we also had Mr. Mavaza in the United Kingdom and Mr. Tendai Mbofana in Kadoma. I'm Marvelous Ntlanga Nyahuye, thanking you, our viewers and listeners. Let's meet again tomorrow.